The House of Representatives has commenced discussion aimed at amending the Joint Admission Matriculation Board Act, also known as Jamb. Lawmakers say there is a need to increase the number of years universities can use the Jamb results like their counterparts outside the country. They say the one-year admission eligibility is no longer feasible as it takes advantage of students, especially when it is no fault of theirs that they cannot secure admission into universities.
As it stands in Nigeria today, when a child takes the Jamb exam and he doesn't get into university that year, not because he did anything wrong, he has gotten fantastic grades, but because of all these implications of catchment area and quotas, he doesn't get in. He has to repeat that same exam next year. It is totally unfair. We are sacrificing the future of our children on financial justification, because usually the justification that Jamb comes up with is that it's revenue generation for them. Now, that is aside. When you look at the number of students that apply for university every year and the number that get in, it is definitely not their fault. So why should they be penalized? Everywhere in the world, there is no such exam that is valid for 1 year. SAT is valid forever. Scholastic aptitude test is valid forever. But most universities across the world will take a maximum 5 years. That, okay, if your result is 5 years, so most people would have to go and take it again, but it's not by law. The GMAT is valid for 5 years. GRE is valid for 5 years. Here in Nigeria, Jamb is valid for 1 entry, and if you don't get in, you repeat it again. It is totally unfair. There are a lot of children in this country whose parents are struggling to put their children through school. These children go through this education, take this exam, pass it, then the following year, because of no reason, they have to look for money again to repeat the exam. We should not, continuing this way likens us as a society to a ritualist who will sacrifice a human being for money. Why should our youth, our children, be sacrificed on the altar of revenue generation by Jamb?
If what she intends to amend is that once you write Jamb, you can use it for 3-4 years, we will create problem we can't solve that we wanted to cure. If that is what she's trying to say. And then she's also querying why the later exams and then catchment areas and all whatnot. Well, we know that it is an integral part of the schools to have what they call catchment areas. For example, people within some vicinity of that school. We also know that, in fact, that federal schools too should have truly federal character. We also know that even schools that have what they call preferential list and all whatnot and so on, I should think that our visits list and so on, that is where the catchment area comes. Her amendment should be very purposeful and directful and defined, so we know exactly what she intends to amend in that bill she seeks to amend. Because that Jamb law seeks to regulate and modify mode of entry into the universities. That even private schools are attempts that are made to pass through Jamb. Therefore, if you seek us to now make Jamb 3-year program, it will not help us. If that is the only reason, then Jamb law does not require amendment for now. But the only amendment we can say is it to take away the post-Jamb EU exam. I do not think that exam is because the schools want to make revenue. I will also suggest that the committee looks at this critically well before you conclude. If it's allowed to go at the committee stage, we should be able to look at critical so we don't create or compound issues. In most cases, we'll try to solve a problem and compound it with the kind of bills and laws we pass. I should think that should come until she explains. I do not understand what she's saying. Well, in course of the argument, we'll get to understand better.
I'd like to emphasize that the purpose of the amendment of the Jamb Act is because of issue of scores and admission. Mr. Speaker, sir, my colleagues, we must know that there is a difference between entry examination and terminal examination. Jamb is an entry examination. You sit for Jamb with the purposes of gaining admission into a university, into a polytechnic, into a college of education, with a view to earning a terminal qualification. My sister quoted GMAC and so many other international examinations. Mr. Speaker, those are terminal examinations. Entry examination, you sit. If you pass and you do not meet the cutoff point, let's say you go and sit again. It doesn't call for a good educational standard that a terminal examination, an entry examination that you sat once, that you use it for 5 years. Mr. Speaker, all over the world is not tenable. We will only end up bringing down the level of educational standard in our country. So I believe that my sister should go and re-examine her bill with a view to profiling good solution for the amendment of Jamb.
They are not able to gain admission even though having satisfied the minimum requirement. And it's because of that for those unforeseen reasons, that those who have now obtained the minimum entry be now allowed to be used in the next examination. There is loss in revenue. Our poor parents that suffer to pay for these children should also be looked into. Yeah, and not all have the opportunity. Some suffer before they could make, and at many times, many colleagues of ours here have to intervene to pay for those students and just for that small figure to get those opportunity to write the exam. I don't think there is any harm in this motion. I will beg that we allow the motion, the bill, go to the committee, let them look into it. I will beg for that.